Hello, Abnormal Family. I've got another one for you today, but before we get started, I'd like to let you know I would truly like to thank you guys for the support you're giving for Hunter. It's making a big difference. We went out today and spoke to an agent that took everything we done and said there was enough. I can't go into a lot, but they're working on it now, so it's making a huge difference. Hunter will be coming home. There's some more stuff to come, but it's all happening because of you guys and your help and your donations and your support and watching the videos and letting the commercials play. Whatever you're doing, any of those are helping a lot. Your likes and shares. Share our channel out to help it grow. Even if it's to one friend. One friend makes a big difference if you can get them to subscribe. Anything you can do right now to push this channel, guys, is helping bring Hunter home. And Herbert, we got your donation today at the P.O. Box. Thank you so very much, sir. That will be used directly in bringing Hunter home. Let's get into today's story, guys. Back in the early 2000s, I was staying on my uncle's farm. I was 16 at the time. My cousin was 12. The farm itself was located on an old dirt road and set on a decent-sized plot of land, almost completely surrounded by the woods. Just across the road from the house was the deepest section of the woods. My cousin and I had spent hours tromping those woods, and we knew them fairly well. We had ventured pretty deep into them and never found the other edge where they would have ended. Now our grandfather, Freeman, and our grandmother, Ruby, had always said that we could mess around in those woods as much as we wanted, but should always be home by sundown. And not just because of the panthers that roam the woods after dark, but had always been vague about what they meant. I remember every evening as the sun went down, my grandfather would go sit on his wooden rocking chair on the porch right after dinner and smoke his pipe, and he always had his 10-gauge double-barrel shotgun across his lap as he stared into the woods and smoked his pipe. We never knew what he was watching out for, but one day we found out what some of those things were. One day, in the early autumn, my cousin and we were out, Mike, wandering in the woods. Not doing anything in particular, just exploring as usual. I don't remember why we were out there for so long, but all of a sudden we realized the sun was very low in the sky and it was getting dark very quickly. So we started to head back toward home when we noticed strange noises all around us. Trees and bushes rustled loudly. We picked up our pace, kind of like your mom said the other night, Mike, that she would hear when she was out. As we walked towards the farm, I heard a particular loud rustle from the bushes to my left, followed by the strangest growl I've ever heard. It wasn't any animal growl I could identify. My head snapped in the direction of the sound, and I saw the face peering at me. At us. It was not the face of a panther, not a wolf face. No, this face was almost human-shaped. It had skin that was grayish-tan in color and almost looked like stone, and its eyes were this deep red shade. But we knew that it could not be stone because the skin moved and flexed just as normal skin would with the wrinkles. I yelled at my cousin to run, and I put myself between this creature and him. My cousin didn't hesitate and bolted ahead. The creature let out this screech and started running after us, chasing us. It was running alongside us at one point, still screeching. The more it shrieked, the more the woods came alive with movement and other screeches. I looked behind us at one point, and the second creature was now behind us. It was in the air, swooping between the ground and the trees. It was even larger than the one running alongside us. It was nearly fully dark at this point, but we were almost to the dirt road. I wasn't sure if we both were going to make it as I prepared myself to confront these things in order to protect my cousin. Then we saw the edge of the tree line just ahead. My heart felt like it was going to pound out of my chest, and I realized I was holding my breath. We burst from the woods, my cousin screaming in terror and me yelling for someone to open the door as we hit the front porch. I didn't wait for the door to open. I smashed through the screen door and collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. My uncle was sitting in his father's old chair, and he just looked at me, shaking his head like he knew what had happened. As he got up and grabbed that old 10 gauge from the wall, he said calmly, "See why you're supposed to be home before dark?" Then he stepped out into the yard. I never heard him fire the gun or heard any more screeches, so I figured whatever those things were contented themselves chasing us from the domain. I just kind of passed out right there on the floor. Everything was dizzy. I could hardly breathe. I felt like something was sitting on my chest as my heart pounded into my temples. The next morning, when I went outside for a cigarette, when I looked toward those woods, there were 3 figures standing just inside the trees, as still as statues. My uncle was already out there, shotgun across his lap. He looked at me and he puffed on his own cigarette and said, "Great. Now you've pissed off the creatures." That was the first encounter with them. A few months later, after the last summer's lingering warmth Mike was gone and the nights had gotten colder, my uncle and I stepped outside and saw what we first thought was a man near one of the cars in our driveway. It was too dark to see clearly what it was, but my uncle pulled the 9mm pistol that he had in his pocket, and he let out a shot. The figure crawled up on the trunk of the car, and my uncle fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Every bullet found its mark. However, when they hit home, it sounded like he just fired into solid muscle. All we heard was the distinct sound of the bullet slapping the meat, and the ricochet from passing plumb through its body. And that's when we saw it jump off of the car, flying sideways, if you will, holding onto its chest, going into the woods as you could hear it crashing through the limbs, smacking limbs and brush as it tried to get away. It sounded like an injured duck beating its wings in the large grass. Then Grandpa looked at me, and he said, "Now we've done it. We've killed one." So now, every evening, when Grandpa sits on the porch, my uncle and my cousin now visit. They sit on the porch until daylight, I guess guarding the house, as Grandpa will sleep most of the day in his recliner, and is wide awake, ready for the nights, along with my uncle and my cousin. I hope I didn't do something and this really isn't my fault, but he says that they will calm down as they did in his mom and dad's when they lived here, and they will finally stay in the woods. But we have to wait until they calm, because now they want to come up to the house and scratch on the house and make noises, squeal and growl. But until then, he said, we must endure this until they finally recede back to the woods. This story reminds me of 2 different things that I've experienced personally. One of the things I experienced was with Sarah and Kaylee one night when we went down to that bridge to where Kaylee was slapped. What I seen climb that tree that night is unlike anything I've ever seen. I thought it kind of looked like a koala bear with wings. The way it climbed the tree was kind of weird. We was trying to film it, but once it got to the top of the tree, instead of stopping to where you could really get the camera on it, it just kind of went to the top of the tree and just kind of right over and dove down into the water and swam underneath the culvert that we were standing on. The second thing it reminded me was one night when my granny was having these things come around the house. We had the front room door open, and then we had the door on the porch open that was covered in, which were in line with each other, and you could look out through them and see out to the yard light, which is where the cars were parked in the circle drive, probably 50, 60 yards from the front door. Whatever these things were, they came up and were actually beating on the hood of her car too. We could see the shadows of them as they beat on the hood of her car. We called the sheriff's department, and 2.5 hours later they had still never arrived. Finally, whenever they did, whatever these things were that had always came to Granny's, they had already vanished, and of course it was written off as prowlers. So I wanted to share this with you guys. I hope you enjoyed these encounters, and until next time, guys, keep your head on a swivel and don't be something's dinner, and please smash that like button. Share this out to a friend. Share it to your social media, to your Facebook page. Trust me, it helps a lot. It gets people interested. and we can grow this page. We can make this one of the strongest cryptid pages out there. We can do good. We can strive for peace, bring peace back to the community, bring everybody back together where we can all work together and try to find these answers. And it'll also help us a lot in bringing Hunter home. Thank you all so very much for your support. God bless each and every one of you. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. We'll see you on the next one, guys.